Hi, my name is Annika Lampropoulos, and I'm going to be sharing my final report on my public awareness project that I recently completed. To begin, I'm going to share my screen to access this PowerPoint that I have just as a visual aid for us here. So as I already said, I called my project my public awareness project. Before we dive into it, I want to begin by briefly going over what is PR. Public relations is the practice of basically managing information from an individual or an organization that reaches the public. This is in order to maintain their public perception. And public relations is different from regular publicity because it is controlled internally. So essentially, as a public relations specialist, you would be representing an individual or an organization, and you would be responsible for all of the information about them that is presented from the company or individual to the public. I considered this year what I could do to become a more well-rounded public relations professional. And one thought that I had was that I needed to be more aware of what was going on in the public. And the most important way that we can do that is by being aware of all current events and global and national and even local news that can potentially have an impact, whether positive or negative, on your clients. So for my project, I decided to get more involved in reading the news and also in just becoming someone who not only read the news but was capable of being analytical about doing so, analytical both in writing terms and also verbally. So the way that I did that was I found a mentor who is very knowledgeable about global news and who is very interested in current events. And we began a process of corresponding about each week's major global events. We all know that over the last few months, the majority of global news has been dominated by the crisis that we're currently is still going on in the Ukraine. And I'll share an example of what we might have talked about in being analytical about this topic. So we all know that Russia invaded Ukraine, but many people here in the United States may not have seen how that would impact us here at the beginning of this crisis. But as we tried to read everything that we could about the situation, months ago, we already became aware that gas prices were likely going to get much, much higher. And that was correct. And that's something that you would want to be aware of if you worked in any realm of business that used gas, which is most, because not only does it raise the prices for gas stations and the obvious things like that, but how about every company that uses gas to move their product, which is almost everyone. So that's an example of a current global event that would potentially have an impact on almost every business. So that's one example of something that we discussed. So each week I would send a few news sources to her. She would send some back to me. We would both read up on those in order to prepare for our conversation. But I also tried to choose at least one article each week that I would write an analysis like this one, and I would send that over to her before our conversation or after, just depending on when we got that sent over, and she would give me feedback on that as well. But it was really, really helpful to me as a future public relations professional to be able to have analytical discussion about what is going on in the world and to really stretch your mind to consider all the different ways that a corporation and an individual would potentially be impacted by situations just like Russia invading Ukraine all the way across the world, and how that would have an impact on you in almost every realm. My main takeaway was that I believe everyone who works under the professional communication umbrella needs to make themselves more aware of current news. I think it's easy as a student to be focused just on those things that are impacting you and impacting your schooling. But in order to really be a benefit to your employer in the future world of business, you need to be someone who is aware of the public, not just around you and what may seem to impact you the most directly, but on a global basis. So I'm really grateful for this project, and it gave me lots of opportunities to stretch myself analytically and to just become more aware of those potential circumstances I might encounter as a future public relations professional. Thank you.